My husband lied to me about his job. After the wedding, he revealed to me that he works in construction. Our wedding day felt like a dream, a true storybook ending. I couldn't have imagined it going any better. The ceremony was elegant and intimate, the decorations were perfect, and every guest seemed to glow with joy for us. And Noah, my husband Noah, was the perfect partner. Kind, attentive, charming, and wildly successful. He had, at least, always appeared that way. We met 2 years ago at a charity event. It was one of those glitzy fundraisers where everything sparkled, from the chandeliers to the sequin dresses. I was feeling slightly out of place, sipping my wine alone near a floral arrangement, when Noah approached me with that confident smile and offered to rescue me from the silent auction. He told me he was in corporate finance, managing acquisitions and strategic investments for a major firm. Everything about him exuded success. He was tall, well-dressed, carried himself with a quiet confidence, and had an easy, comforting warmth. As we dated, I fell deeper in love with him, and there were so many reasons. Noah was thoughtful and grounded, the kind of man who seemed to know everything but spoke humbly about it. He didn't discuss work much, though. He kept our conversations focused on the world around us, our dreams, and plans. The few times he did talk about his job, he was vague but convincing, handling client portfolios, he'd said, or traveling for board meetings. I thought I knew what I was getting into when we got married. I pictured us as this powerhouse couple, me, an events manager with a growing reputation in the city, and him, my successful executive husband. But that image would be shattered by a single breakfast conversation the morning after our wedding. We were honeymooning at a cozy resort in the mountains, and as we sat down for breakfast, he seemed unusually quiet. Finally, he looked across the table with a strange mix of nerves and determination. "Ellie," he began, holding my hand. "There's something I've wanted to tell you for a while now, but I didn't know how. And, well, I didn't want to lose you." My heart dropped. What could he mean by that? A confession like this, right after our wedding? My mind raced with horrible possibilities, but I took a deep breath and steadied myself, squeezing his hand. "Just tell me," I said softly. He exhaled slowly, gathering his thoughts. "I haven't been honest with you about what I do for work. I don't actually work in finance or manage investments. I work in construction." At first, his words didn't register. Construction? I thought maybe I'd misheard him. I laughed nervously, searching his face for a hint of humor, a glint that would suggest he was joking. But his expression was serious, solemn even. "Construction," I repeated slowly, barely managing to process the word. "You work in construction?" "Yes." He nodded, not breaking eye contact. "I've worked construction for nearly 10 years. I started right out of college as a laborer, and over the years, I worked my way up to a project manager. I oversee site operations for a company that builds luxury apartments and commercial spaces in the city." The world seemed to tilt a little. Here was this man I'd married, the man I thought I knew everything about, telling me that his entire identity was, in fact, a lie. I took a moment, trying to comprehend it all. "But why didn't you tell me?" He sighed, looking down. "Because I didn't want to lose you. When we met, you were surrounded by so many wealthy, successful people. I felt like if I told you the truth, you'd see me as less. You might have looked down on me or thought I wasn't ambitious enough for you. I was so desperate to impress you, Ellie. It just got out of hand." I shook my head, speechless. My stomach churned with anger, sadness, and a lingering sense of betrayal. "But Noah," I finally managed, "I thought I married someone who was honest with me." "I know," he whispered, eyes full of regret. "And I hate myself for lying. But I love what I do. I love being out there, seeing a building come together from the ground up. I just thought you might not understand." "I might not have understood? Noah, that's not fair. I gave you my trust because I thought you were someone who trusted me enough to be honest," I said, voice thick with emotion. He reached for my hand again, but I pulled back. "Ellie, please. This doesn't change who I am, or how I feel about you." "That's just it, Noah. I don't even know who you are anymore." The rest of our honeymoon was tense. Noah did his best to explain, to apologize, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been married to a stranger. My mind went back to every moment we'd shared, and I felt foolish for not seeing it sooner. I had been so taken with the idea of who I thought he was that I'd ignored every inconsistency. When we returned home, I was still hurt and angry, and I asked for space to process everything. But the distance didn't give me clarity, it only made the sense of betrayal stronger. Every time I looked at him, I saw the man who had looked me in the eyes countless times and had lied. One night, after days of silence between us, Noah took me by surprise. He handed me a hard hat with his company's logo on it. "Come to work with me tomorrow," he said. "See for yourself what I do." I hesitated, but his expression was sincere. So the next morning, I found myself stepping onto a bustling construction site. The sound of drills, hammers, and heavy machinery was deafening, and workers moved around purposefully. Noah introduced me to his crew, men and women who greeted him with friendly nods and respected him deeply. They didn't see a liar or someone unworthy of my love. They saw a leader, someone who got down in the dirt with them, who knew every bolt and beam and wasn't afraid to put in the work alongside them. As I watched him coordinate with architects, solve last-minute issues, and even help lift supplies, I began to see Noah in a new light. He was so focused, so comfortable, and so real. The Noah I saw in that hard hat was someone who was proud of his work, not someone pretending to be someone else. By the end of the day, I felt a shift. The truth was, Noah's job didn't matter to me. What hurt was that he didn't trust me enough to let me see this side of him sooner. As we walked back to the car, I found myself reaching for his hand. He looked down, surprised, then gave me a hopeful smile. "Thank you for showing me this," I said quietly. "I didn't understand before. But I think, maybe I do now." He nodded, eyes brimming with gratitude and something like relief. "I'll make this up to you, Ellie. I'll be the husband you deserve. No more lies." For a long moment, I simply looked at him, letting his words hang in the air, hoping I could believe them. I wanted to, desperately. But trust, I knew, wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. "We'll take it one day at a time," I said finally, my voice steady, but my heart racing. "If you want me to believe you, I need you to be honest. Completely." He took a deep breath and nodded. "I promise, Ellie. No more masks." From that moment on, our life together took on a different texture. It was raw, less glossy than I'd imagined marriage to be, but real. Each day, we found small ways to rebuild the trust that had been broken. He started sharing more about his work, even small details I'd never thought to ask. Over dinners, he'd tell me about site inspections, permit delays, and design changes, opening up parts of his world he'd hidden before. And as he did, I started seeing glimpses of a side to Noah I hadn't fully understood. One day, a few weeks after our conversation, he invited me to a community meeting where his company was pitching a new project. It was at a local library, a modest, somewhat worn-out building that couldn't have been more different from the glitzy galas where we'd met. But there, Noah stood in front of a group of locals, answering their questions with empathy and ease, patiently listening to concerns about noise and disruption. He knew the neighborhood well and even remembered the names of some of the residents. He was deeply respected, trusted by people who saw him as one of their own. Watching him in that room, I felt a new admiration, a new understanding. The man I'd thought of as polished and distant from the world was actually grounded and connected in ways I'd never realized. I hadn't married a high-flying executive, I'd married someone who worked hands-on to make things better, piece by piece. After the meeting, we grabbed a coffee at a small cafe nearby. Noah's face was relaxed as he sipped his drink, and I felt something shift in me, some wall that had been holding me back from fully forgiving him. "You really care about this work, don't you?" I asked, searching his face. He looked at me, eyes softened with the same mix of pride and vulnerability I'd seen that morning on the construction site. "I do," he admitted. "I've always loved it. I love creating things, seeing them grow from plans on a page to something tangible, something that helps people." And for so long, I hid that part of me from you because I was afraid you'd see it as small, insignificant. But standing here with you, it doesn't feel that way." Hearing him speak so openly melted the last of my reservations. I reached across the table and took his hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Noah, I love you for who you are, not for what you do. I just want to know all of you." His face softened, and he held my hand like he never wanted to let go. "And you will, Ellie. I'll keep showing you, one day at a time." The months that followed weren't perfect, but they were genuine. As he opened up more, I found myself drawn to parts of Noah I hadn't fully known before, the way he'd thoughtfully bring flowers home on Friday afternoons after long weeks, or how he'd sometimes disappear on weekends to volunteer with his co-workers, repairing houses in under-resourced neighborhoods. He wasn't the polished finance executive I'd imagined, but someone real, someone whose hands were calloused and whose heart was fully invested in the work he did. Our life together became simpler, humbler, and infinitely more fulfilling. Every so often, we'd stand together on one of his finished projects, looking at the skyline or watching people stream into a newly built community center or apartment. And as he pointed out each detail he'd been involved in, I felt a pride in him I'd never known possible. One spring evening, almost a year after our wedding, Noah took me to the first site he'd ever worked on. It was a tall, modern building now, gleaming in the setting sun. We took the elevator up to the rooftop, where we could see the whole city spread out before us, every window reflecting the golden light. "This is where I started," he said, wrapping his arm around me. "I was just a laborer then, barely knew how to do anything. But I remember looking out at the city from here and thinking, one day, I want to build something that matters." I looked up at him, feeling that same mixture of love and awe that had grown with each new layer I'd uncovered in him. "You're building something that matters every day, Noah. And we're building something together that matters too." He turned to me, eyes shining. "You're right," he whispered, pulling me close. "I've finally learned what matters most, and I'm never hiding it from you again." In that moment, I knew that no lie could stand between us. We were building a life together, one as strong as the buildings Noah brought to life, built on a foundation of truth, vulnerability, and trust. And I knew then that I wouldn't have it any other way.